Don's been a good and faithful member of the church since we've been here, and has been a good friend.
Don's a good guy. He's a father and a husband, and he's a grandpa now.
When you talk about the glass is half full or half empty, well, Don always sees it as half full.
Don is a person that gives me so much hope. He gives me life. He gives me a feeling of happiness that I'm looking for.
He's a wonderful guy. I know Don, of course, through the choir. And that's, you know, my first coming here. Don was very open from the time I walked through the door as to welcoming me and trying to get me in that bass baritone section.
He was very active and vital person, and though he had prematurely white hair, was not old at all. He was young and vigorous and working, and has been a dynamic part of the church for all these years.
My dad is a very people-oriented person, loves people, very active, racquetball and shooting the basketball, swimming.
But he is a man of energy, of integrity, of consistency.
He has a big heart, and he's very true to his word. He's always been a good family man, and he's very ethical.
Played a very quiet, steady, consistent, not flamboyant, not flashy, just good, solid, strong, stable, energizing presence.
As I learned more of him, as I became closer, he became someone I could confide in, someone I could trust.
Loves music, likes to toot his horn when he gets the chance, loves to sing.
Fill my heart with song, let me sing forevermore.
Don's my friend.
I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and Don wasn't in bed, so I got up to see where he was, and he was saying, when I found him in the family room, that his chest was bothering him, and he felt like he had indigestion. By 9 o'clock, he still had these symptoms, so we went down to this clinic, and they hooked him up to an EKG, and then the doctor said to me, "Oh, I think you better go to the hospital for further tests." So I said, "Okay, I know where that is, I'll take him." And he said, "Well, it's standard procedure that the paramedics take him." And I still wasn't overly concerned, so I said, "Okay, I'll follow the paramedics." And the paramedics were going through red lights, and so then I was becoming alarmed. So I got to O'Connor and called our sons.
She had indicated that Dad had a minor heart attack, and he was at the hospital and they were running some tests. So that, you know, that really took me by surprise, because my dad is has never had any heart problems before. Good health, racquetball 3 days a week, very active, you know, pretty conscientious about his diet. So to get a call like that from my mom was, it, you know, just floored me.
He had up to 5 arteries that were, I don't know, 80% more clogged, but they weren't sure until they got in there, and they stated they would have to do bypass surgery first thing the next morning, which was obviously pretty quick.
I was stunned to hear that Don was having a problem with his heart. He's so strong and vital, firm and tough. To squeeze him is to squeeze a small Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's solid, fit, and had in fact just been playing racquetball within hours of that incident. So it's too young, too improbable, but of course we never know, do we?
So the next morning he had the bypass and came out of it really well, no problem. And he came home a couple days later. It was astonishing, really, doing very, very well. And we were thinking everything was just fine.
They had indicated to her that he really didn't need a lot of supervision. It was just more of him healing. You know, I don't know what it was, but somewhere in the back of my mom's head, she knew that she needed to keep an eye on him for a while.
And then 10 days later, it was in the early evening, we were in the family room, and all of a sudden Don slumped to the side and he was just gone.
Not even doctors ever foresaw something like this coming on.
I called 911 immediately, and the dispatcher was trying to talk me through things, wanting me to get him on the floor, and I couldn't get him on the floor because he was dead weight. And then she said, "They're coming up to your door. They're coming up to your door." So I ran and unlocked the door, and the paramedics came in. They were really wonderful.
And the phone rang, and it was my mom, and she was hysterical. And she'd said, "The paramedics are here. We're rushing you to the hospital. Your dad went into cardiac arrest." And she just really was just not really speaking clearly.
And then I got, you know, really stressed about the whole thing and rushed down there. I just couldn't believe we were going through this again.
So immediately I jumped in the car in Pleasanton and rushed down and met my mom and my brother over at the hospital.
He had a period where his brain did not receive oxygen. He was resuscitated in the field, was brought into our hospital. They got his pulse back, his heart back, but he essentially had no brain function at that time.
I remember that the paramedics either indicated directly to my mom or indirectly that it didn't look good, that my dad was gonna come out of this or survive this. And you know, that I know kind of put me into a bit of a tailspin emotionally. And
the doctor came, and he did not seem very promising on this, asking me if Don and I had discussed things. So at that point we knew that it was touch and go. And Don was unconscious, and the doctor said if he goes 72 hours not gaining consciousness, then we're really in trouble.
You can imagine what a shock that would be for the whole family, having gone through such a major operation and what appeared to be quite successfully, to now a week later where things looked pretty bleak.
Then the doctors allowed us to come in one by one, and my mom was the first to go in. And I just remember the look on her face when she came out. And, you know, I guess a look is worth 1,000 words.
And we went in there, and it was pretty hard to go in there and see that. And they just said, you know, we're not sure whether, we think somebody can hear you talk when they're unconscious, but we don't know, but it never hurts to do that. So we kind of took turns and went in there and talked to him and told him I wanted to play racquetball with him again.
He, in the first 24 hours, had very little in the way of brain function, and the prognosis was beginning to look pretty bleak.
To see him in the state he was in was just, there was nothing that could prepare you for that.
Seeing Don, all the machinery, no response, to eyes opening, to a squeeze, a touch, a smile, an acknowledgement that someone was there with him. I remember lots of prayers.
I remember talking to the doctor in the ER. I believe there was a cardiologist in there as well. And you know, I think they were prepping us for the worst.
And his two sons and Pat were in the waiting room at Valley Med, and they were without much hope that he would live. He had been without oxygen for so long. And in fact, their biggest concern was that he would live with brain damage. And so we sat there for, seems like several hours, just remembering who he was to them and releasing him. It was really a moment when the family was releasing him to God.
I don't know, there was almost a feeling of temporary, I guess, peace or relief that, you know, my dad would be taken care of either way.
I know that we all sat there and cried, and there was very little hope that they had, or I couldn't offer hope for his life. But of course our hope isn't always rooted in this life.
It seemed like I was going there to say goodbye.
When I got the news about Don being in a coma and not expecting to wake up, I was thinking that, gosh, I'm going to miss him.
My heart at that point went not only to Don but to Pat, who was with him, and what that must feel like for a wife to be in that kind of crisis and so helpless.
I just remember my mom just, you know, realizing that it was very likely that she was going to have to be without my dad, or either without him completely, or be with my dad and be more of his caretaker. So she was just incredibly overwhelmed, and I just remembered, you know, I'm trying to comfort my mom and be strong, and you know, I'm barely keeping it together.